Typically, Windows applications use Windows-based navigation. So when the user makes a menu choice or clicks a button, you open a new window. Web applications, in contrast, use page-based navigation. One page is visible at a time, and the user clicks a link and that loads a new page in the browser. WPF provides both Windows and page-based navigation, so you can decide whether to use Windows or Pages for your UI. If you're going to use Pages, then you'll use the Page class. The Page class is similar to the Window class. It's a container and can therefore have a single element. That element will typically be a grid or a stack panel, and then within that you can have whatever you want. A primary difference between a window and a page is that a page is designed to be navigated to. You can host a page in a window, a navigation window, a frame, another page, or the browser. And when you're navigating using Pages, you're going to be using the Navigation Window class. And this represents a window with built-in navigation support. So it includes the ability to display content and to navigate. That content's typically going to be a page. It also automatically generates the back and forward buttons and the navigation history list so that you can move backwards and forwards. And then finally, the runtime is going to create one of these for you automatically. When you're navigating from page to page, you'll typically use hyperlinks. And in WPF, these are inline flow elements, not controls. And the Navigate To property of the hyperlink specifies where the application is going to navigate when the user clicks the hyperlink. So here's an example of using a hyperlink. I have a text block that says page 1, and then that text is surrounded by a hyperlink element. So when the user clicks page 1, the application will navigate to page 1. In the second example, the text block says go to page 2, and the page 2 is underlined, and that represents the hyperlink. So as you can see, the hyperlink is not actually a control, it's an inline element. So let's go take a look at navigation in WPF applications. I have the Window Navigation Demo sample application up and running, and it's a very simple WPF application that uses Windows. So my main window has two buttons. If I click button 1, if I click the window 1 button, that launches window 1. If I click window 2, that launches window 2. Now the code behind these buttons is very simple. I create a new instance of window 1 and show it, or create a new instance of window 2 and show it, which is exactly what I would do in Windows Forms, of course. And I can do that because each of these XAML files represents a window. Window 1 is a window, window 2 is a window, main window is a window. So what I wind up with is an application consisting of windows. If I want to see customers, I can open a window to see customers. If I want to see reports, I can open a window to see reports. The alternative is to use page-based navigation, where I have a main application window, and then when I navigate from UI to UI, I do that inside the window by navigating to different pages. And to see how that works, I'm going to create a new application, and I will call it Page Navigation Demo, and I'll put it in the samples folder. And now by default, the WPF application template gives me a window. So this main window.xaml is actually a window. But I don't want to use a window, I want to use pages. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to add a new page. So let's add a page. Let's actually add new item first. And I'm going to select page, and I will call this main page. Then while I have the Solution Explorer open, I'm going to add two additional pages, page 1 and page 2. Okay, now let's go to the main page. This is going to be the main page. And before I forget, I actually need to come into app.xaml because the application is configured to start up with main window. So I need to change this to main page. Okay, now let's add some XAML to the main page. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is set the title to home. And then the window title, I'm going to set to Page Navigation Demo. Navigation Demo. And then I'm going to set the window height equal to 400 and the window width equal to 400. Now, why am I doing any of this? Well, this is a page, and the title of a page doesn't appear in the window. This page is in a window, but the title of the page doesn't appear in the window. It appears in the navigation history list. So I can set the title of this page, and that determines what displays in the navigation history, and then I can also set the title of the window that this page is in, along with the height and width of the window. And then I want to add some XAML to this. I'm actually going to replace the grid with a stack panel. And I display Page Navigation Demo as the main text on this page. And then I have 3 hyperlinks. And these hyperlinks are inside 3 text blocks. Let me see if I reformat this, if it makes it. It doesn't. Copying and pasting XAML from Notepad doesn't always keep the formatting. There we go, good enough. Okay, so I have 3 text blocks. The first says page 1, and that's going to be a hyperlink. So inside the text block, I have a hyperlink element, and then inside that is page 1. So page 1 is the text in the text block, but it is the hyperlink. And when I click on page 1, I'm going to navigate to page1.xaml, because that's what the navigate URI property is set to. The second text block says go to page 2. I only want page 2 to be the hyperlink. So the go to is outside of the hyperlink, which is the inline flow element, and then page 2 is inside the hyperlink, so page 2 is the link. If I click on that, I'll navigate to page2.xaml, and then finally I can visit AppDev's website. The hyperlink is the words website, and we navigate to AppDev's homepage. Let's go to page 1. I'm going to replace the grid with this XAML. Just display that this is page 1, and I'm going to set the title to page space 1. And then in page 2, it's essentially the same XAML as page 1, only instead of saying page 1, it says page 2. Okay, that's it. Let's save this, let's build it, and then let's run it. Let me call up the main page again. So now this page, this main page is being displayed inside a window. And that's why I set the window title to Page Navigation Demo, that shows up here, and I set the window height and window width to be 400. And then because I'm using page-based navigation, notice that I have back and forward buttons automatically. They're disabled because there's nothing to go backwards or forwards to. They'll become enabled in a second. If I click page 1, I navigate to page 1, and the contents of page1.xaml are now displayed in the window. I can navigate backwards. I can also navigate forwards, and I can go to the home page. This is why I set the title to home. That title property of the page is what displays in the navigation history. I can go to page 2 and go back, go to page 2 here, go home. I can also go to AppDev's website. And I load that page inside this window. I can go backwards, I can go home, I can also go forward to the website. While I'm inside the website, I can navigate around. But notice now that this navigation history only knows to go home. It doesn't keep track of pages I've navigated to inside the website. It only keeps track of pages that I've navigated to inside the application. So if I go backwards, I'm leaving the website and going to the last page I was on in the application. And of course, if I go forward, I'll go back to the website. So that's how page-based navigation works in a WPF application. You have your choice of doing Windows navigation or page-based navigation. In the previous demo, we built a simple application that did page-based navigation. And the navigation was performed by using hyperlinks. So let's spend a couple minutes reviewing URIs, or Uniform Resource Identifiers. If you've done web applications, these are pretty familiar to you, but if you've been doing mostly Windows Forms applications, this is a good chance to do a refresher. To navigate, you need to specify where you're going to navigate to. And so you set the Navigate URI property of a hyperlink to a URI. And again, URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. It's basically the address of the location you want to navigate to. And the URI can be a number of things. It can be another page in the same application. It can be a page in a separate assembly. It can be a website. It can also be a control on the same or a different page, and this is known as fragment navigation. URIs are always relative to the base URI for the application. You might think of a URI as basically a XAML page, so you set the Navigate URI property to page2.xaml, or maybe you just set it to a website. But in reality, URIs are a little more in depth than that. URIs in WPF use what's known as the pack URI scheme, and that defines packages and parts, where the packages are containers for parts. If you've used the packaging API in .NET, then you're familiar with packages and parts. Office documents in Office 2007 and 2010 also use packages and parts. The parts are pieces of XML that make up the pieces of the document, and then those parts are packaged up into a single container, and that's actually the document. URIs in WPF follow the same type of scheme. So a pack URI consists of three parts. The scheme that specifies how the resource is found, that's typically going to be pack. The authority, which specifies the type of package that contains the part, it's typically going to be the application's assembly. And then the path, which specifies the location of the part within the package. In other words, what XAML file do you want to navigate to? So let's go see some examples of using hyperlinks in a WPF application to navigate. I have the WPF navigation demo sample application up and running, and here's my home page. And the home page shows some hyperlinks so I can navigate inside the application. And we're going to work with hyperlinks, so I'm going to click this first link. But notice that because this page is based on the page class, it automatically supports navigation, and therefore I automatically, without having to do anything else, get the back and forward buttons and the navigation history drop-down. And as soon as there's something I can go back or forward to, these buttons will become enabled. So let's take a look at hyperlinks. I click the Explore Hyperlinks link, and now the back button becomes enabled, so I can go backwards or forwards. And in the history list, I see the current page. I can also go home. Okay, the first thing we want to do is look at AppDevExperts. So when I click this, we're going to go to a page. Let's look at the XAML for this hyperlink examples page. And when I click on this, I want to see the contents of the AppDevExperts page. So this hyperlink, I've set the Navigate URI property to appdevexperts.xaml, which is a page in this application, and it happens to be sitting right here. And then also, I'm going to run the code in the showURI method. So let's click on this, the page comes up, and I get this message box. Navigate URI is appdevexperts.xaml. So the navigation to the page occurred because I have the Navigate URI property set. This message box occurs because I ran this method show URI. Let's look at the code for that. And then let's go back and do it again. So the message box appears. Here we are. The sender is the hyperlink I clicked, and that's an object in my code, so I cast it to hyperlink class, and then I read the Navigate URI property. And then I'm going to build a string based on that URI. I say that Navigate URI is link URI, and then I check to see if this link is an absolute URI, which in this case it's not. We'll see an absolute URI in a second. This link is not an absolute URI, it's a relative URI, because we're navigating relative to the page we were on. Let's take a little deeper look at URIs. Let me shut this down, and I'm going to put a breakpoint right here and then run this again. So let's go to hyperlinks, let's go to AppDevExperts. Okay, now the sender is the hyperlink, and the URI, the Navigate URI property, is just this string appdevexperts.xaml. But the URI is a little bit more than that. So what I'm going to do is highlight this. So after I cast the sender to the hyperlink, and what I want to see is the base URI property, which is this. And it follows the pack URI scheme. Pack URI consists of 3 parts. The first part is the scheme, which specifies how the resource is found. And then in this example, that's pack. Then the authority specifies the type of package that contains the part, and here it's the application. And then the rest of this is the path, which specifies the location of the part within the package. And this says the hyperlink examples.xaml page, which is a component inside the WPF navigation demo assembly. So on the one hand, you don't really care because the URI is just a string, but in reality, it is more than that. It's a pack URI. Okay, let's remove this breakpoint and continue running, and there we are. Okay. Now if I want to see the AppDevExperts, I can come to this page, I can scroll up and down. I have a scroll viewer in here that enables me to view all of the experts. But it'd be nice if I could just go to a particular expert if I am only interested in learning about one of them. So let's get the XAML for this page back. And I've managed to now separate this from the others. This is actually a feature in Visual Studio that each of these windows is dockable. And so occasionally you wind up separating them. So it's a handy feature, except when it happens when you don't want it to happen. So if it does, you can just drag the window back where you want it. Okay, this is what I wanted to show. Here's the XAML for this page. Now watch what happens if I navigate to Ken Gets. The URI is appdevexperts.xaml pound kgetspanel. And that's a bad example because it doesn't appear to be any different. So let me bring up Dan Wahlin. So now we navigate to Dan Wahlin, and if I click on Don Kiley, the application is navigated to dKiley panel. What's dKiley panel? That's the name of the stack panel that contains Don's image and bio. And so the application has navigated directly to that. And then of course it draws the other experts because the window's wide enough to do that. I suppose if I made this window only wide enough to display one expert at a time, then we could really see this a little better. Don Kiley, yeah, sort of. Doug Ware, you get the point. So this is fragment navigation. If in my URI I put the name of a page, then the pound sign, then the name of a control, then when I navigate, the runtime will go directly to that control. Now when I click on this link and go to the AppDevExperts page, I'm going to a page inside this application. When I click the second AppDevExperts link, I'm going to a different AppDevExperts page. And look at the Navigate URI. It says the AppDevExperts.xaml page, which is a component inside the AppDev page library assembly. And that assembly is here. So now I'm navigating to this page, which is inside a separate assembly. So how did I get that separate assembly? So what I did was I added a new project to this solution. And I selected WPF Custom Control Library. And Visual Studio creates a project with code and then a themes folder. What I did was I deleted both of those and I added my appdevexperts.xaml file as well as the images of the experts. So let me just remove this because we don't need it. And then what I did was I set a reference to AppDev page library inside my main application. And then when I did that, now I can navigate to the AppDevExperts page in that assembly. Big benefit of this is it makes it easy for me to reuse pages across multiple applications. Okay, let's go back. Now, in addition to navigating to pages inside the application, I can navigate outside of the application. So here we are. So if I click the first Visit AppDev's website link, then I'm going to go to AppDev's website. I just set the Navigate URI property to AppDev's website. I'm going to run different code when I click on that link. And that's because I want to display a message to the user. You're navigating to a website, be careful. So let's go take a look at the code that runs when I clicked on that. Let me actually close this, move this over here, and now we can see the code. Let's go back. Let's go there again. So when I click on that, I run this code here. I display the warning message, and then I run the same show URI method that all of the other examples run. And so the Navigate URI is appdev.com, and this is an absolute URI. If I'm navigating to a page inside the application, that's a relative URI. If I'm navigating to a website, that's an absolute URI. So I could check to see if URIs are relative or absolute. That would give me the ability to distinguish between when I navigate internally versus externally. Now, what happens when I select the second AppDev website link? Sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong file here. Here we go. When I click the second AppDev's website link, I'm going to navigate to http://appdev. And unless there's an AppDev server on this network, this is going to fail. And it does, and I've intercepted that, and I display your attempt to navigate to that site failed. And then the show URI method displays the absolute URI. Now, how did I intercept that failure? Well, if we look inside app.xaml, I'm handling application-level navigation events. The navigated event occurs when the content that's being navigated to has been located and is available. The navigating event occurs when you request a new navigation, and the navigation failed event occurs when there's an error navigating. So if we look at the code behind here, right here. This application underscore navigation failed method is handling the failed navigation attempt, and I check to see if the exception is a web exception, and if it is, I display your attempt to navigate to that particular URI failed. And that's what was happening when I click here. I intercept that error. So what you've seen in this demo are examples of using hyperlinks to navigate inside a WPF application. And because this application is using page-based navigation, it actually looks and feels like a web app.